Alright, a couple days ago, I put out a 4-man comp video for the hardest dungeons in ESO, and this is the subclass tank that I am bringing to that comp. I know pure classing is really the hot thing to do in Update 50, but I think that a subclass tank actually solves the major problems for 4-man content right now a bit better. The 3 major problems that I see in 4-man are penetration, getting to the crit damage cap, and then staying alive. And this build solves 2 of those really well. The penetration thing, it solves really well, and staying alive. And with this, I'm pairing it with a Warden healer, so that solves the crit damage problem. With this setup, I still put out tons and tons of damage buffs or debuffs on the bosses, and so the group can do really, really, really incredible damage. Alright, let's get into it. Here's my setup for trash right now. This is actually not ideal for trash, but I don't really want to spend transmute stones for trash setup because everything dies so fast. Ideally, I'd be running Turning Tide just on the back bar with an ice staff and infused crusher, and then Lucent Echoes on the body. But right now, I just got Torig's packed because it's craftable and can add some extra pen in trash, which is still needed in dungeon trash, but I do think that Ellie would be a better call. But this let me not use transmutes and still get swift jewelry and all the stuff I want. So yeah, so Torig's packed and Turning Tide, Spalder of Ruin on the shoulder, Magma Incarnate 1 piece, and this is 511, so 5 pieces heavy, 1 piece light, 1 piece medium to get more undaunted passives, and then swift jewelry. Then really the traits on the body are personal preference. I like divines in trash to up my magicka recovery with the Atro. I have all prismatic defense enchants on the body. On the front bar, I have Vatashrine, the Void Bash, Sword and Board with Decisive and Reinforced. And that's when you use a Power Slam, you can group all the adds in. So the basic idea with this is that you lay down your Blockade of Frost, which procs the enchant on the back bar, which gives penetration, and then Caltrops, which causes major breach, which gives more penetration. Then you power slam something, and that brings everything in with the Void Bash. Then you can Choking Talons everything and make them stay still. Then Runic Sunder to taunt and further lower their resistance. And then Leashing Soul to grab anything else that's around that didn't get pulled in with the Void Bash. Warding Burst and Blood of the Elder Dragon to shield and heal, and Blood of the Elder Dragon also gives Minor Courage to boost some damage. And then Charging Maneuver to run faster between trash packs. And then for the ultimate, I never cast ults in trash because it dies so fast, so I just have Replenishing Barrier on both bars to get the Magicka Recov passive from the support tree. On the Leashing Soul, I have Pull, Druid's Resurgence to get a little bit of mag and stand back, and Cowardice to apply Major Cowardice, which reduces the enemy's weapon and spell damage, so they just don't hit quite as hard. For the CP, we have Duelist Rebuff, Ironclad, Enduring Resolve, and then I'm just testing out right now Cutting Defense to see if it actually does any decent damage. And then Boundless Vitality, Fortified, Bastion, and Rejuvenation, and then green doesn't really matter. Oh, before I get too far ahead, for the attributes, I have 62 into health and 2 into stam. Really, you just want to get your health around 40k, maybe a little bit higher, and then your stamina higher than your magicka, so then when you do a heavy attack, you get stam back instead of mag back. So really, with this setup, I could put all into health and be fine, but I do like having a little bit of stam. And then for food, I run the Smoked Bear Haunch, which gives max health and then a bunch of recoveries, and then Atro for mag recovery on the Mundus. For potions, I'm almost always running Essence of Tri-Restoration, which just does health, magicka, and stamina. Sometimes I'll run Essence of Immovability or Heroism if I need to get my ultimate back really fast. For race, I'm an Imperial, mostly for the red diamond, reduce the cost of all your abilities by 6%, and it gives some good max stam and good max health. But Nord is also a great choice for more resistances and a little bit more ult regen. But I find when I'm running with a Warden with that Major Heroism buff from their class passive that the ult regen doesn't really matter because I already have Major Heroism going. I really do like the red diamond reduction of all abilities. Then for my boss setup, I have Archdruid monster set on the helm and shoulders, Sack Seal to proc Major Force when I use an ultimate, and War Machine to proc Major Slayer when I use an ultimate. And that ultimate is Summon Charged Atro, which procs Major Berserk. So anytime I ult, it does Major Berserk, Major Force, and Major Slayer, which is just a huge burst in damage right away. On the front bar, I just have a Druid Sword, which is a 1-piece max health, and then a Shield of Trainee, which is also a 1-piece max health, Decisive and Sturdy, Absorb Stam, and then a Prismatic Defense enchant. On the body, I have a few well-fitted pieces because I do like to dodge roll in a lot of these, and I feel like that saves me a bit more stam than Sturdy does. But you could set these up however you want. Just make sure you get to the resistance cap so you have enough reinforced to get you to that like 33k resistances. And then infused on the jewelry with a bracing enchant, which reduces block cost, and then reduced spell cost. And then for sure an infused crusher on the back bar, War Machine Ice Staff. I'll only ever ult on the back bar, so I make sure I always proc War Machine when I ult. Obviously same CP as the trash setup, but the skills change quite a bit. I have Warding Contingency, which is one of my favorite skills. This gives a huge damage shield to you and allies. Also reduces my damage taken by 8% and grants minor protection, which reduces damage taken by 5%. Then Runic Sunder is the real reason I'm using the Arcanist skill line at all. This is a taunt, but also steals 2,200 armor, which is really needed in 4-man content right now. So instead of running Tremor Scale or Crimson Oath or things like that, I decided to just go subclassed with Arcanist to have Runic Sunder for that pen. And that also allows me to still do Major Berserk through the ultimate over here. For the really hard stuff, I like Revealing Flare because it gives major protection, which reduces damage taken by 8%. I don't ever cast this because there's not any hidden enemies I need to expose, but it's just for that passive major protection. And then Defensive Stance. This gives a great passive while slotted and you have a shield equipped. The amount of damage you can block is increased by 10% and the cost of blocking is reduced by 10%. So for really hard things, that's really nice. Also, you can pop a really nice damage shield using stams. So if you're out of Magicka, you can use this as a shield instead of the shields that cost magic. And then Blood of the Elder Dragon. This is a great heal that scales really high if you go low health. Also gives your group minor courage, which increases their weapon and spell damage by 215. Then, like I said, Replenishing Barrier still just for that Magicka recovery. On the back bar, I got Blockade of Frost. This procs the Crusher even when you're on the front bar, so it reduces the penetration of the enemies. It also gives the allies a little shield and can proc Chill. Then Warding Burst, which gives a nice damage shield and heals for a little bit over 10 seconds. And then right now I have Brutality and Sorcery on here, which just increases my weapon and spell damage by 20%. Which doesn't do a ton for tanking, but it still just helps a touch. Before I was running Minor Resolve on this, but I don't need that because I have Bound Aegis now. When you actually level this skill, it increases your block mitigation by 50% for 5 seconds, which is just incredible. When you know you're about to get hit by a heavy or something super hard is about to hit you, you can pop this. Also, I just realized this has the passive of Minor Protection, so I'm actually going to go change my Warding Contingency to have something else. I swapped Warding Contingency to grant Minor Intellect and Minor Endurance to give just a little bit more magic and stam recov, because Bound Aegis already gives Minor Protection and Minor Resolve. So I had to switch what I normally run from Warding Contingency and Warding Burst as that third piece, because Bound Aegis gives it passively, which just opened up them to do more. Then same thing, Unleashing Soul as in trash, and then Spell Symmetry to get some mag back when I really need it. You got to be careful with this because it does cost health. It does reduce your healing and your damage shield strength by 50% for 4 seconds. So you have to be really careful when you use this. You might notice that I don't have anything that gives me Major Resolve here, and that's because my healer is a Warden. And they're using Frostcloak. Also don't have anything on my bars for Major Breach. That's because that Warden healer is also using Elisus to breach the enemies. So that's 2 things I would add on here if I didn't have that healer. I would put on Unbreakable Fate for Major Resolve and some great block mitigation. I still might slot that every once in a while over Spell Symmetry for the actually really hard stuff because it adds a ton of block mitigation when you consume Crux with it. And then I'll talk through some other skills that might be useful. Obviously, get all the passives from all 3 skill lines. They're really good. In Daedric Summoning, you can grab another ward with Hardened Ward. And then also on Soldier of Apocrypha, you can use Rune of the Colorless Pool to proc Minor Vulnerability. It also does Minor Brittle, but that doesn't really matter because of the Warden Healer already proccing Minor Brittle a ton. And then if you don't need the penetration from Runic Sunder, Goading Throw is a really great scribed taunt that heals and can apply Major Maim. reducing damage done from the enemy. On Destro Staff, sometimes I need to interrupt from a distance, so I take Crushing Shock in order to do that. And then if I don't have the healer running Elisus, then I will run it. Also, just as a note on the Destruction Staff, I don't take Trifocus at all because I don't want blocking to cost Magicka on my back bar instead of stamina. Then all the armor passives, all the Mages Guild passives, the Undaunted passives. Sometimes I like to run Chilling Trample, which does some frost damage and also grants Major Heroism, but I found I don't need that because I have the Warden Healer already proccing Major Heroism. In support, Replenishing Barrier and Revealing Flare, and this is the Magicka Recovery passive I was talking about. So because I have 2 on my front bar, I'm getting a 20% increase in my Magicka Recovery. And then in Alchemy, make sure you grab Medicinal Use to get your potions lasting a bit longer. So yeah, that's the build, that's the concept. I was going to show some gameplay of our True Genius Trifecta, which Stone Garden is one of the harder ones with some heal checks, and it can get overbearing if you do too much damage too fast. But that was just making the video way too long, so I'm just going to upload at the same time as this one, that Trifecta video. So go look on the page, it'll be there. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you on the next one. Peace.